It's Three Chords and Some Lies podcast. Welcome to you and thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm Andy.
I'm Jim.
And today we have got Steve Jordan from Jordan Guitars, who is seemingly a legend of guitar sales. And we want to hear all about him, all about what he got into, why he got into it. Steve, welcome.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me on.
No worries at all.
Thanks for coming.
I'll get straight stuck into it.
Yeah, let's get into it.
What was your first guitar?
My first guitar was when I was about, I think I was around 14. It was a Hohner white Strat, and it was like a lot of cheap guitars at that time, where you basically would have to stand on the fretboard to fret a note because the action was so unbelievably unplayable. It's Bobby Basic white Strat. It was probably a little bit better than an Encore, which was the ones you'd always get in Argos catalogues at the time. But I think it cost about 50 quid, and that was my first one. I haven't got it still.
You've still got it?
No,
he hasn't.
He used
it for firewood. Firewood.
Yes,
absolutely.
And what was it that sort of got you into wanting to play the guitar in the first place? Who were your first sort of influences?
I remember having a pivotal moment. I was about 12, maybe 13 years. I think it was 92. And I went on a school trip, so second year of high school, to a place called Maison de la Varenne, and it was a place in Dieppe in France. It was a school trip. I distinctly remember it, and my memory's awful, as you'll probably find out from this interview, but I distinctly remember this. I was in a dorm room with everyone just messing about, and somebody put on Nirvana Nevermind on the record player or CD player or whatever it was. And I wasn't into music before that at all. I hadn't bought records or anything like that. And I was like, this is absolutely game changing. It was like mind blowing, and I was absolutely hooked from that moment on. Listened to that album about 50 times in that week when we were away. Then kind of got home and started to understand a bit more about who they were, and then ended up getting quite into Guns N' Roses, starting to kind of investigate Kerrang magazine and all of that kind of stuff, thinking, rock music's it, and got massively obsessed with Slash. And then probably about a year later, I was like knocking on my parents' door, asking them to help me out with buying a guitar so I could start learning. So I was probably learning at about the age of 14. And then I was playing with mates from probably the age of 15 onwards and haven't stopped since, I guess.
That is an absolute mirror of my story. I remember when I first heard Nevermind.
Probably a lot of people at our age, I think.
Absolutely. I remember when I first heard Nevermind, I loved Polly and I loved Lithium, and I thought I needed two different guitars because I didn't realise you could get a clean sound out of an electric guitar. I had no idea at all. Yeah. But it was that Christmas when because I think I'm 3 years older than you. It was that the Christmas when I was 16. So, God, my maths tells me that must have been 1990, I think, it can't have been. Yes, it must have been 1991 Christmas that I went out and got my Encore, and that was the first thing I learned was like
Lithium was the first song for me as well. That was the first song that I heard off that album, and that was the one. Everyone thinks it would be like Come As You Are or Teen Spirit or something, but it wasn't. It was Lithium.
Yeah, that was the one that got it for me as well. So, so that was your first foray into wanting to play the guitar. What on earth started out the massive journey towards what is now your career?
I don't. It's a bit of a weird one. So I've played in bands since I was around 15, 16. So what's that? Pushing 30 years. Haven't really stopped since then. I've always been played. The guitar, and I've always kind of not collected guitars as in a big time collector with 35 in the loft or anything, but I've always bought guitars and sold them and that kind of stuff as just for myself over the years when I was a teenager and early 20s and stuff. And then my career until 3 or 4 years ago was in marketing.
Yeah.
So I had a marketing career for the best part of 20 years. So that's what I was doing for money. But then I remember, I think it's around 2014, 2015, a guy that I was in a band with, a guy called Mark, who's actually a professional podcaster.
Okay.
He had a Fender Baja Telly,
Oh yeah. Right.
and he needed to cash out on it quickly. And he said, I need to sell this for £400. And I was like, you know what? That's a £500 guitar right there.
Yeah.
I'll take a punt on that. I'll buy it off you. And I remember putting it up on Facebook that night, and it sold within like an hour. And I thought, okay,
Right.
that's interesting. So I thought, well, okay, maybe I'll get a couple more and I'll try again. And I remember buying a Trans Green American Deluxe Strat. I remember the early ones. I don't remember anything since.
Yeah.
But I bought that for about £700, and that sold about a week later for 900. And I started to kind of just build from that, and it just started escalating heavily from that. I mean, it wasn't a commercial venture at that point, really. It was more just having a bit of fun, see if I can make an extra £100 here and there. But it was very much on the side of a proper job, which took a lot of time and the family and all of that kind of stuff. And then around 2016, I think I started taking it a bit more seriously. I was still doing a full-time job, but I set it up as a partnership with my wife. So I put some structure around it and started investing more in guitars. And that started getting to a point where by the time we hit COVID, it was almost like it had escalated to almost a full-time job on top of a full-time job.
Yeah.
And then when COVID hit, I was put in a fortuitous position where I had a very good job at that point, and I was well paid. And I was basically told for 4 months, you're on furlough. You aren't allowed to work. You can't work. You've got 4 months off, whatever. And I was like, okay, this is really interesting. Now I can actually just focus, see what I can do if I just focus on guitars without having to kind of balance it with something else. And that went really well, to the point where it grew quite heavily. I put a brand behind the business. I put my own name to it, which was really important to me. And when COVID ended, and my day job said, you need to stop traveling an hour into work every day and an hour back, and we need you back in the office, I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because at that point, I'd proved the model. I knew I had what it takes to be able to do it professionally and be able to sustain my lifestyle and my family, etc., around it. And that was about 4 years ago. And since then, I've just focused. I quit my job and focused on guitars, and have built it from that, really, and just focused on getting the best guitars on the market, offering a good service, maintaining the reputation, which is absolutely everything in this game, because the UK guitar market isn't that big, and you have to be very transparent and honest, and try to be a good person around it. And just try to build it from that. And fortunately it's continues to work well at the moment.
So do you? I remember I first dealt with you probably about 2015, I suppose. But I also remember coming to your house during COVID, meeting you outside in the middle of the night in your driveway, because we couldn't go in the houses, and looking at stuff. And yeah, you've always been one of my go-to places because of your honesty, transparency, and always phenomenal stock. So the usual question from here is, when you're choosing what to buy, what are the things that really stand out to you? What would you say are the top sort of 3 or 4 guitars that you're always up for buying?
I'll be really, really honest, because that's what I try to be. It's very commercially driven. This is my day job. It's a business. I mean, it's driven by passion. I'm a guitarist. Continue to go out at the weekend and gig and that kind of stuff, and it always has been that. But it is a business, so I treat it as a business. So commercials are incredibly important. It's all about buy price versus sell price,
of course it is,
minus the VAT and the corporation tax, etc., which is, thanks to our previous government, has taken massive hikes. So margins are getting tighter, and it is driven by that. But equally, I'm very, very picky on what I take in. The brand is really important. Of course, it is. I do. I mean, we tend to trade with a stock of around 250 pre-owned guitars, which is one of the biggest pre-owned guitar collections in the UK, if not the biggest.
Yeah, I think it is.
And there's a lot of you big boys there. You've got your Gibsons, you've got your Fenders, the stuff which people are obviously always after. But I always try to splice that with some of the kind of more niche or boutique brands. So whether that's Exotic or Saw or Tom Anderson or Patrick Eggle or all of those, the rule is if it's a decent guitar and I can make it work financially, then I'll consider taking it in. But then it's things like condition and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, there's obviously it's a bit counterintuitive to talk about models because you would think, oh yeah, you should do loads of Strats and Telecasters and Les Pauls because that's what everyone wants, and that there is a truth to that. But equally, the market is flooded with American Standard Sunburst Strats. So if you take one of those in, that's absolutely fine, and it will sell at some point. Of course, it will, but there might be another 10 on the market. Whereas if you take in, I don't know, Patrick James Eggle Macon or something like that, then maybe there's only 2 on the market. And actually, yes, it's more niche and there's less people out there wanting to spend £3,000 on a Patrick James Eggle, but someone will buy it at 100%. So I try to kind of mix it up a little bit. I've kind of given up the business has sold well over 4,000 guitars. I buy about 1,000 guitars a year. So I feel like I've got a really good view of the market. I know how much something will sell for. I've probably sold that guitar many times before or something like that. So I do have a really good read on it. That's how the business works, is because of that. But equally, I've given up guessing because you'll take a guitar in and go, that's an absolute banker, that's going to sell within a week, and I've got it 9 months later. And then you'll take something in which is a bit more of a punt and think, oh, I'm going to be stuck with this, and then it can sell within an hour on social media. So it kind of, I've kind of given up guessing. But to be honest with you, the way that we run the business, we don't run it as a shop. We run it as a warehouse, and then I have as you know, Jim, a private room where we demo, and it's a more personal approach to customers, and people book appointments. Because of that, and I'm not having to make every hanger on the wall count. I'm not having to turn that guitar within 2 weeks to kind of keep making money. It's never been about that because of the way that I structure the business. It doesn't really matter to me whether that Telecaster you're holding, Jim, when that inevitably comes to me, which it probably will at some point, let's be honest. It doesn't matter to me whether I sell that within a week or whether it takes a year. It doesn't matter as long as I'm selling 3 or 4 guitars a day to be able to do this and sustain the business. Then it kind of doesn't matter. That kind of takes a bit of the pressure off. But yeah, I like to mix up the models. I've got my favourites, and I know ones that sell quicker than others or tend to. But I like to mix it up a little bit as well.
So what's on the wall of fame behind you today?
So behind me today, you've got my 73 Strat, which is just about to become my Radiohead tribute band gigging Strat. That is my 73 Les Paul Custom, which is my gigging Strat for my Smashing Pumpkins tribute band.
Yeah.
And that is just a random Les Paul standard, which a customer was looking at this morning.
Okay.
And he bought the other guitar.
So it changes every day.
That Strat is awesome. So, Steve, is there a skill in doing what you're doing? Is it a skill that you had to learn? Is there a skill you had to develop? Or have you is it because you sound like you've got your head screwed on very, very well? Is this something that is it something that you've learned? Is it something that you cultivated and learned as you went?
I think a lot of the business side of Jordan Guitars is driven by my time in marketing. So, I mean, my previous role, I worked for Speedo, the swimwear brand, for 15 years. And my role was basically leading the creative execution of that brand. So my role was basically to make sure that brand looked good in 180 countries across the world. so that it was very creative. It was very about look and feel and all of that kind of stuff. And if you go and you can see a lot of that kind of dripping through to Jordan Guitars as a brand, in terms of, if you go on the website, all of the guitars are shot in the same way.
Yeah.
You can look on Facebook Marketplace and see 1,000 guitars in front of you, and you'll know which ones are ours straight away.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that kind of underside
Clever.
of stuff coming along. I mean, I don't know if it's a skill, but there's definitely an experience side of it. I think I couldn't do what I'm doing without that 20, 30 years of guitar experience. Not from a playing experience, but just from an understanding of guitars in general, how they work, what the models are, what the specs are, all of that kind of stuff is incredibly important.
So being a player helps then. You know, if you're a guitar player, you know.
Yeah, I think so.
Help,
I think it just adds an air of legitimacy, and it needs to be authentic. I feel really weird being a guitar dealer if I didn't play guitar. That feels odd. And I think when I chat to people about guitars, hopefully it comes across that I'm coming across as a guitarist, not as somebody necessarily who's trying to sell you the most expensive guitar prop that's possible. Because I think people aren't stupid, and I think people can read through that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's definitely an important bit, and that experience of thousands of guitars is massively important, because otherwise, if you're in a role which is buying and selling and you don't really understand the market, you're going to be bankrupt within weeks. You're not going to make any money. It's as simple as that, particularly in the market at the moment, which is quite tough.
Yeah. Have you got any horror stories of times when you bought stuff that wasn't what it was supposed to be and that sort of stuff?
This is going to sound really arrogant. I hope it doesn't come across that. But I'm just looking at the moment, 4,271 guitars that we've took in.
So
I'm pretty sure I've lost out on 2 of them. And the only reason I've lost out on them is because I've broken them whilst they've been in my care.
Oh dear, okay.
They're both Les Pauls which fell off stands whilst I was photo shooting them.
Oh no!
Oops.
And that's it. So everything else has been profitable. Sometimes not a great profit, sometimes more. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be doing what I was doing if I couldn't make money out of it, without trying to sound too sinister and too dealery about it. But
no, that's fine.
Like I said, it is a business, and I invest a lot of money in guitars every year to make what is becoming an increasingly small margin after tax and VAT. So you better know what you're doing, otherwise it doesn't work. Plenty of people have tried to do this and it hasn't worked for them. I've spoken to several people who have tried to set this kind of stuff up as a business and it hasn't worked for them. So
I am the king of losing money on guitars. I'm too invested in it emotionally for me to ever be successful on selling stuff, because when I get gas, as well, I'll be on the phone. If you get something I like, I will find a way of having it. I'll come up there and I'll, with the intention of getting something, and get something completely different, which comes on to my next question. Does that happen a lot? Do you get people that come up for something and go home with something else on a regular basis?
Yeah, loads. Yeah, that happens a lot. I think one of the services that we kind of offer, which seems to be really, really popular, is the ability to come and book an appointment, pick out like your 3 favorite guitars, play them all, and then walk away with the one that speaks to you the most, which I think is a much. I mean, we ship guitars all over the world daily, but I think that's always a very nice way of doing it, particularly if you're buying something special or something more expensive. The ability to, because as you know, all guitars are different.
Yeah.
So the ability to be able to kind of try them out and pick the one that talks to you is a really nice thing to do, and people appreciate that. And to your point, it happens all the time. They'll come in and go, okay, I'm going to play these 3 Les Pauls. I've got an idea. It's probably going to be the yellow one I'm going to go for, or the burst, or whatever it is. And then they'll just connect with a different one, and then they'll buy it, end up walking away with something that was slightly different from what they wanted. But at least that way they walk away having spent however much money it is, knowing that they got the one that was right for them, which I think is nice, and that you just don't get that when you buy online. It's always a bit of a lucky dip. So yeah, that happens. It happens all the time.
It's my I think Jim, was my Les Paul, did that go to
your
Steve?
Les Paul went to Steve.
My Les Paul Supreme a few months ago. My brother said, I know this guy who does, and apparently that was you. So apparently you had my Les Paul Supreme, a 2015 Supreme.
Was that the triple humbucker one?
It is indeed.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, it's not sold yet, and that's my point.
It hasn't.
I bought.
No way.
I bought that and thought triple humbucker Supreme. That should be pretty easy to move. There's not that many of them around. Great.
Absolutely, because no way gutted,
and that's it. So I've got X £1,000. Yeah, X £1,000 in that, and it hasn't sold. So this is the point. The reason this business works is because of the scale and the amount of guitars. Because if you're a dealer and you're dealing off, I don't know, and you're doing it on the books, if you're a proper dealer, not someone just dealing in cash and avoiding tax, if you're doing it properly, then and you've got 5 guitars, you could be stuck with those 5 guitars for 6 months.
Yeah, damn.
And that's it. You've made no money. So and this is my point. That Supreme, I thought that was a banker. I thought that's I'll take that in. That should be gone within a month. No,
they're a limited
6 months ago.
Yeah. They're a limited edition. They only make not that many of them, I believe. And I think while they're not custom shop, they're the high end of the other shop, aren't they? And it's a beautiful thing.
It's a lovely guitar. And sometimes guitars just don't find buyers quickly. It's just one of those weirdly, things. And that's the kind of, it's a lottery.
Yeah. I was gutted to sell it at the time, but I don't miss it. Weirdly,
it's one of those things.
Weirdly, I don't. Other guitars I've sold, I really miss, but I don't know. It kind of. I mean, it was a wonderful guitar, and I loved it to bits. But I'm kind of a Strat guy, so I like them all.
Did you? Has the B&G gone?
No, that's not gone either.
That's not gone. I reckon that will go fairly soon. But with these things, you just never know. I mean, as I say, with me, I'll start the beginning of the week thinking, right, I'm set. I don't need any new guitars. I'm not going to change anything at all. Then you'll post something up, or Ryan will post something up. I'm like, right, how can I get that? Right, Steve will buy that. I know he'll buy that. Or Steve, or I'll have that one. Or like that pink telly that came up yesterday. I
saw that
double bound one. And then it's like, wow, that's amazing. And you just, and I guess I used to do an awful lot. Am I still in your top 10 buyers and sellers, do you reckon?
I think you're on the brink.
Yeah.
Definitely. I don't know whether you're top 10, Jim, but you're definitely valued. And that's all that matters.
I always come to you first. So I've also seen recently you've had a few fairly famous people buying stuff off you. Who've been your sort of most famous people you've sold to?
I guess the most recent one was John Squire from Stone Roses. He bought one a couple of months ago. He bought a very nice Masterbuilt Strat. I had Murray from Easy Life in literally 2 weeks ago with a very nice Rickenbacker Blue Boy, which he'd used on stage at like Pyramid Stage, Glastonbury, and all of this kind of stuff. So I do quite a lot of stuff with the Easy Life guys because they're Leicester based, and I've got very good relationships with those guys.
Yeah.
And then there's more. I had Adam from the Struts in fairly recently. They just played Download, and I think he was on tour with Slash at some point recently. But then there's also random ones, like I sold a guitar to David Baddiel. I sold him a Flying V last year,
really?
Which was really strange, having a conversation with David on the phone.
It's just a random guess.
It's really weird. You couldn't make it up. It was bizarre. So yeah, there's lots of random bits and pieces like that. I had you probably remember, Jim. I had a situation where I sold a Wilco Johnson Telecaster to Wilco Johnson a year or two ago because the Fender didn't make it anymore, and he wanted a new one, and then he used it for his last 2 or 3 gigs, and then he's obviously sadly died, and then I ended up buying it back off Wilco's Guitar Tech, and then being able to pass that on to a really big fan. That sold within 90 seconds.
Yeah, I remember it come
Literally,
up.
it wasn't 2 minutes, it was 90 seconds. I put it up on
My
Instagram,
God.
and I had a conversation saying, I want it straight away, done.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it had to go to a proper fan. I remember you told me a great story about one of my favourite guitarists is Nile Rodgers.
Yeah, Nile Rodgers. So the Nile one was a bit funny. That was really early on. I'm talking, God, 2015, 2016. It was a long time ago, and he bought a American Standard white Strat with the matching headstock. They only made a limited run of them. It wasn't that expensive guitar. I think at the time it was about £700. But he bought that, but it was managed through his management company, and it was shipped off to Germany. And the story from the manager was that it was being used by Nile. It was a charity show in Dubai, and I think there was them and a couple of other big bands were all going to use that Strat for the show, and then they were going to auction it off afterwards. But the manager was legit. He sent me photos of him with Nile and stuff. But wow. I asked him to send me photos of Nile using it on stage, and I never got those photos, which I was really pissed off about. But yeah, so there's bits and pieces. That one was a bit more indirect. But I've not had Slash through my doors yet. That's the one.
It may.
That will be nice, but it's not happened yet.
I was going to ask that, Steve. Is there anyone, living or dead, that you would love to walk through your door and go, I'm after a guitar? Who would that be? Is that Slash?
Yeah, Slash. Every day. In full top hat. Slash. Definitely.
I don't think he takes it off ever, does he?
It was I remember being obsessed by, they did a gig in Paris, and I got a VHS copy of it when I was about 13. I think they did it with Aerosmith and Lenny Kravitz. It was definitely Lenny Kravitz, because they do Always on the Run with like 4 of them all playing guitars at the front of the stage, and it's just the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw that video, I was like, right, okay, I'm going to start playing guitar. Simple as that. And then within 3 months, I was kind of having lessons and stuff.
I remember they also did a cover of Wild Horses, and I remember Slash used a Black Guild acoustic, and I always thought, I'm going to have a Black Guild. I haven't had one yet, but I'm going to have a Black Guild acoustic because of that, hearing that for the first time. And also, I think they might have played the intro riff to Wish You Were Here. I think I probably had that on VHS too, and I probably wore it out. I remember I watched it so many times.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, UPS. I've told them to leave it outside. It's fine.
Yeah, no worries.
Sorry about that. The UPS driver's looking at me through the window going, are you going to answer the door? And I'm like, no, we're all good.
That's fine.
No
That's what the editing function's for later on.
Yeah.
What's coming in today? Anything exciting?
Today is fairly quiet on guitars. I've had a pink Paisley Japanese Telecaster come in today. 335 in cherry. I've had, which is quite interesting, I've had a year 1 Fender Telecaster bass come in, 1968.
Wow.
Whoa.
But I think I already have a buyer for that.
Yes, that's not
followers of Jordan Guitars will probably never see that guitar, because I'm hoping to move that before I have to actually list it. So that's today. Today is trying to get a seller on that. You might not see that. That is here at the moment. It's quite cool. Unfortunately though, it's stripped. So it's a 1968 year 1. It's originally the blue Paisley one. Now the blue Paisley 68s are worth about 20 grand at least. Yeah. This has been stripped, so it's worth like 3-4 grand. That kind of money. So it's not crazy, but still quite cool though for year 1 68.
Yeah,
it's nice.
That is not a common thing.
No. Well, obviously,
so that's today's. It's not a particularly not too crazy today. What else have we got? I've got Squire JV on the way in, Elite Strat, pretty simple kind of stuff. Yeah, nothing too crazy. Oh, I've got I'm talking nonsense. I've got a 59 Murphy lap coming in later. Forgot
Oh,
about
nice.
that.
Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
that's
Les
coming in.
Paul,
That's coming in later.
Les Paul at 335.
Les Paul.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
that's
Enough
a
of that.
light aged burst coming in straight after this actually. So yeah, bits and pieces coming in always.
Yeah. Without being crass, what's the most expensive guitar you've ever sold?
Um, I tend to have a nosebleed at around 10,000.
Yeah.
I think for me, I think the reason this business works is because I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at.
Mhm.
What I'm not, because of my age, what I'm not experienced at is selling super high end vintage stuff. So even though I've been offered really high end vintage stuff quite often, it's never something I've really dabbled in because it's very, very high risk. And
Yeah.
you've got to really know your stuff. You've got to know
Because
has that been rewired? Is everything original there? Are those screws original? Because if they're not, that
Mm.
can wipe a lot of money off the price.
yeah,
So I tend not to dabble in that end. I'm definitely a premium dealer. I don't do it much of the kind of like the sub £600 stuff isn't really what we do. The taxation system makes that really difficult to make money on, if I'm completely honest with you.
Mm.
But so I tend to deal in American. I do a lot of custom, I do a lot of vintage, I do a lot of rare stuff. But yeah, I mean, I sold um, a Gilmore Relic 2 days ago that went for nearly 10. Um, I've sold a '68 thin line telly year one
nice.
as well. That went for about 11, I think, if I remember rightly. I've sold an Adam Jones Silverburst that went for around 10 and a half. It's that kind of money is the absolute top end of what I
So,
currently do. Whether that will change in going forward, I don't know. But
Well,
that's kind of where I sit.
you had the Cantrell as well, didn't you? Did that sell in the end?
Cantrell went for about 8, 9, somewhere around that kind of money. There's still people out there buying those kind of guitars. The market's quite quiet. It is definitely quiet versus where it's been before. Less people wanting to spend money, a lot more people trading and partexing,
Mhm.
which is fine. I'm absolutely happy to do that. But you've still got that proportion of customers that I know and collectors and stuff who are absolutely happy to spank £10,000 on the guitar that they want.
Yeah.
They're still definitely out there.
so we our previous podcast was sort of about dream guitars. Here's mine, which is my. What do you think about that?
That's a Sir, right?
No, it's a Pensa. It was after John Sir left Pensa.
Ah, okay. Yeah. It looks, yeah. Yeah, okay, nice. How is it?
So it's wonderful. It still is. It's a quarter of a century old, and it looks like I just bought it off them.
Very
Hopefully, you can
nice.
see it all right. I'm never going to
Yeah,
sell
very
it,
nice.
so I'm not going to ever pester you and say I want to sell it. But they're fairly rare. These things. There's not that many of them about.
Yeah.
So it was the reason why I said it was. Would you have a guitar made for you? Have you got a dream guitar that you could is it a '68 Les Paul, or
Good question.
would you go to Gibson and say, I want you to make me one, or have you got a dream guitar that you'd like to own?
I wouldn't because I think I'm too commercially minded, and
Yeah.
I know when you do stuff like that, if you ever need to resell it, it'll absolutely plummet on the market. And I'm very savvy stroke boring when it comes to stuff like that. I think about that kind of stuff a lot. It's kind of drilled into me through doing this business, I think. So
Mm.
I wouldn't ever get a guitar made for me. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, like I said, the business will tend to stock around 250 guitars, but I actually only personally own 3. So
Okay.
over the
Interesting.
years, the guitars that I've had in my collection have just been sold to the business and filtered out. I only keep the guitars that I use to gig with, um, and so I don't really feel like, yeah. And when I'm gigging, the thought of having something which is irreplaceable and probably very expensive kind of scares me a little bit. I like my guitars when I'm gigging to be battered,
Yeah.
so that I don't have to worry about them. Which is like that's the 73 Les Paul and the 73 Strat are. I mean, they're absolutely battered, but I love them for it because I know I can have a good time and just abuse them on stage and play them and enjoy them, and that's kind of it. I've had some very very ornate stuff. I've been offered a lot of private stock PRS and one custom built Taylors and like with all the vines on it and all that kind of stuff. And they're incredible. They're beautiful, but I just don't think they're for playing. I think they're the guitars that look nice on the wall, and actually you don't want to touch them because if you put a ding on the front, you're going to wipe about $3,000 off the price, and that terrifies me, particularly with how I play live.
I've got to see that. You also, I say, you play in a Radiohead tribute and a Pumpkins tribute.
Yep.
How did those two come about?
The Pumpkins one's been going for must be about 5 years. I was in originals bands for the first 25 years, chasing the dream. Didn't make it. Played across a number of bands. Had a lot of fun. And then I reached 40 and had a complete midlife crisis, and basically quit the originals band that I was doing at the time. And just thought, I can't bother to do this anymore. It's too much hassle. I was having to write all the music. I was having to do all the promotion, book the gigs, and all of that kind of stuff. And it just felt like it was hard work, and I was really busy, and I just didn't have the time. And then I think I was off for about 3 weeks, and then I had another crisis going, what are you doing? Music and guitars, you like, you love being in bands, you've been in the bands for the last 25 years, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then just when that moment happened, the guys who were setting up the Pumpkins band just happened to put an advert out, I think it was on Facebook, saying, we need a guitarist with Midlands bass. And I love that band. They're one of my favourite bands ever. And I just thought, that just sounds really, really fun. And so we set it up. It got immediately shut down for COVID. And Billy Corgan also tried to shut us down. He sent us a cease and desist. Actually, true story. Off our first gig, he saw the poster. We stupidly. I say we. Our singer tagged him in on our first ever gig poster, which we'd used a lot of their artwork. And then within 24 hours, we had Billy Corgan's legal representation in the US messaging us, telling us that they wanted all of our earnings and all of this kind of stuff, which was funny because we'd earned literally nothing. So that was easy. But
Oops.
Yeah. But yeah, that started. And we've played all over and done some great shows and festivals and stuff. And that keeps my heavier rock side engaged, which I love. And the guys are incredibly talented. It's a really good band. We're the only one in the UK, and there's only about 5 in the world. And between you and me, I think we're the best in the world. But I'm not going to say that on camera.
So I'm going to come and see. I'm a big Pumpkins fan, so I will come see it.
But it's really fun. And then the Radiohead one started about a year and a half ago. I wanted to be able to access some of the big tribute festivals that we weren't able to access with the Pumpkins, because it's not quite, even though they're a big stadium rock band, it's still very rock. So Radiohead was an interesting one because I love that band, and it's quite a challenge to play. But it's also a bit more broader and a bit more commercial, so it's enabled us to get into some really good kind of the more commercial festivals as well, which like we're playing this summer, which are just an amazing fun. And you can walk out at a Radiohead tribute show at a festival, and you've got 1,000 people singing back at you, and it's just like, this is just mega.
Phenomenal feeling.
It's really cool.
Hey, that's great. Look, Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to come and have a conversation with us today. It's massively appreciated. As you know, I'm a big fan of yours and a big customer. I always tell everyone to come and see you. So
appreciate it.
And as I say, we will continue on with the same. But final question: of all of the guitars that you've sold, what do you think is your favourite? What is the one that's stuck in your mind as the one that you've just gone absolutely wow?
That's harsh.
Oh, that's really hard.
That's a hard question.
The one that immediately springs to mind, and I mentioned it earlier, was that 68 thin line telly.
Yeah.
That weighed about £6. and it was incredibly like really, it was just a lot. It was a lie. It was beautifully set up. I bought it from another dealer who'd done a really, really good setup on it. And that was really hard to let go of. I had it on that hanger for about 3 months where I didn't list it because I was like, that's the best Telecaster I've ever played. And I've sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of I love Telecasters. I gig with Telecasters myself for 20 years. I love Telecasters. And I was like, that's as good as it gets. But now in the bands that I play in, I don't play a Telecaster. And like I said, there's no point in me really having a big collection of guitars because I can access any guitar that I want at any time. So it kind of doesn't make sense for me to have 10 grand on the wall in guitar that I'm not going to play.
Yeah.
But that one was super, super special. And when I sold it, as soon as the customer left the door, I thought, you're going to regret that. And I do.
Yeah.
I do regret it because it was mega.
The one that got away. No, I think it's one it happens to me every day. It really does.
Yeah.
I let stuff go. Or I think what my favourite one I ever had off you, I think, always the Friedmans. I always regret selling those, but they're always great. But I think there was a gold over gold Strat that you sold me once, a 64.
Yeah, I remember that.
Fabulous as well, and I really want that Mischief Maker you've got, but I can't justify it at the moment because I'm not using anything Strat like. So it's good. But anyway, look, mate, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Steve.
My wife and child have just got back, so it's probably a good time to round it up and say thank you very much. And Steve, I'm sure we'll be in touch soon.
And do you have a website, Steve? Do you have a website? We'll put it in our description.
Yeah, jordanguitars.co.uk for all of your pre-owned vintage and rare needs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go and check it out, and come and have a chat with me for anybody who's interested in guitars. But no, thank you for having me on. Appreciate it. I'll always talk guitars forever. So any excuse is good.
This was the point of the whole thing. So it's all good. That's all good. Thanks, man. Cheers, Steve.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
Thank you. Bye.